Hello everyone and welcome to Galaxy 89 Cars. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I've teamed up with Evhire, or Exotic Vehicle Hire, to show you one of their newest cars. If you've watched my content before, you'll know I've driven a Ferrari F430 Spider, and of course I've driven quite a few Porsches. So this is a foray into a new adventure with Lamborghini, and one I've been looking forward to doing for quite some time. I think the first thing I should do is probably walk you through getting into the car and setting it up for a drive. So if you move over to the car, first thing we should do is take out our key, press open, and the little handle pops out. Then we're greeted with the ad personam Lamborghini interior. Let me get in. Reaching out to the door, pretty easy to pull in. So on the door we have the handle, the lock and unlock controls. We've also got the mirror controls here, so turn it that way, you can adjust that mirror, just tilt it, adjust the mirror. Heated mirrors, this one switches the mirrors into the side, and then we've got the left one here. So you've got the steering wheel in the centre. It's turned at the moment because I was doing some filming before, but I'll walk you through it briefly. All leather upholstered. I'd actually kind of think I would like Alcantara, but I'm sure leather's going to be absolutely fine. On the left hand side we've got the directional controls and the lights. I'm sure this is probably going to end up being quite annoying, but we'll see. At the bottom we've got the Strata Sport and Corsa. Looking forward to trying these out and seeing how easy it is to switch between modes and seeing the differences between modes. And then on this side we've got all the window wiper and washer controls. So obviously you've got the screen ahead, couple vents, a little screen, we can see what that does later, all the different controls for the windows, the lift, parking sensors, start, stop, everything here. So in terms of driving, we've got our key. You can keep it in your pocket, or I'm just going to put it down here. And we go down to this fighter style start stop button, lift it up, and foot on the brake, and we can start the car. That is truly an amazing sound, and of course you get the screen start up and everything like that. Next we have the controls on the center column. So you've got the parking brake, reverse if we need to, park hold and manual. Might as well flip that down, turn the radio down as well. Right, so we know that storage space in supercars is never really good, but I think the Huracan kind of takes it to a next level. You can take the key or use a button on the driver's side, hold down that and it opens. And then there's a little flap under here, we can just pull up. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the boot. We've got some leather accessory kits either side. At the moment I've got my storage equipment in there, but really, I mean, you can only really get kind of a small bag in there, I guess. Maybe a couple groceries if you really want to use this car for that kind of purpose. Okay, so everything has been adjusted. The mirrors, that mirror, the gears, everything has been adjusted. I'm finally ready to set off. So what we do is we pull the paddle in, put the parking brake down, and then we're ready to set off. So just simply take your foot off of the brake and move it onto the accelerator, slowly depress it, and we can move on. And I'm hoping that you can kind of get a feel for how sort of easy it is. But what I'm going to have to demonstrate very, very soon, I'm just going to open the window because I'm boiling, is the lift system. Now this is something I've never used on a car before. So I'm going to try and give you a sense of kind of what it's like. So I've got a speed bump coming up ahead, as you can see here. So what I'm going to have to do, because this car is extremely low, is go down to the central panel here and then pull this back. And then what that does is bring that up there. And if we watch very subtly, we can see that the nose should be lifting. We've got to wait until the yellow marker goes solid, and then the nose will be lifted to its full position. That's it. Now we can hopefully slowly move over this bump. Easy. So what are my very first impressions? The steering is a lot lighter than I was anticipating. For some reason in my mind I thought it was going to be really hard. What is hard is the ride. Although once again, it's not crazy. It's, you know, not that much harder than the bath I had, in all honesty. It handles those bumps totally fine, although I'm going to make sure I go super slow over them, even though I've got the lift kit on. I don't know how I'm going to find this indicator, but we'll try through trial and error. So I want to go right, so I've got to push the little button to the right, but now the entire means of indicating has travelled to the other side of the steering wheel, which is a bit, and it's upside down, which is a bit confusing. To stop the indicator, you just have to press the little button in. So the lift system is still up, the front axle lift. I think it's totally safe to drive the car with this up, and it automatically goes down above 40 miles per hour. So I think if you are driving above 40 miles per hour for like 5 seconds, like sustained travel, the car recognises that and automatically puts the lift system down. It goes down a lot faster than it goes up. So at the moment, I've just started off in Strata. I want to take to it kind of nice and easy. Basically means that everything is as soft as it's going to be. Sports exhaust system is closed, that kind of stuff. So it's meant to be the most easygoing driving mode possible. And I got to say, it's pretty laid back actually. It's a lot less aggressive than I was anticipating. Cheeky little blip, because there were so many people watching. I thought, how could I not? So already gone down into sport. So now I've entered some sort of more countryside roads. I put the car into sport, stiffens everything up, opens the exhaust valve. I'm not sure if you can hear, but it sounds incredible with the pops and bangs that are coming from the exhaust. That doesn't actually happen in Strata. It's a lot more subdued, which is something I didn't expect. I've got a little Boxer behind me that's really, really trying its best to follow. Doing a good job actually. I'm not driving that quickly really. Gear shifts are incredibly fast, very responsive. As soon as I touch the paddle, the gear is slotted into place. So I've been able to drive the car for a little bit. What are my first impressions? Well, as I thought, I really dislike the indicator stalk on the left-hand side. Having it in a place that changes location makes it actually really difficult to be able to indicate to where you want to go, because you kind of, if you have a small roundabout and you need to change direction very quickly, you have to kind of mentally work out where the indicator is going to be. And because this is like my first time driving this car, once I actually even put the wipers on, so that I dislike. The seats, as all people have spoken about in Lamborghini Huracans, are extremely uncomfortable. Well, I think these are the comfort seats. I imagine so because I've got quite a significant amount of padding. It's not that necessarily they're uncomfortable. For me, it's that obviously you have a curve in the bottom of your back. The seats are shaped to fit that curve, but for me personally, there isn't necessarily enough space for me to straighten out my back. So the curve in my back can fit the curve into the seats as it's meant to be. So my back is kind of straight, or maybe even sort of curved at the bottom in a way that it was going to cause my back to ache. I've been driving now for about, I don't know, 20 minutes, and yeah, it's starting to hurt a little bit, but it's nothing major. It's all about visibility. Well, the rear view mirror, I mean, you can kind of see through it. There's a huge reflection from the engine. So it looks like when you've got a rear window in a car and it's really, really fogged up. That's exactly how this looks. I'm not sure if it will come across on camera, but I'll do my best to show you. Of course, the rear view mirror is magnified, so everything's kind of a lot closer than it actually is. So you can kind of see what's going on. But a better gauge of what's going on is actually using the side mirrors. I have to compliment Lamborghini on the side mirrors. They provide a really large amount of visibility. So I feel like I can kind of see very well what's going on either side of me. Not quite behind me, obviously, but the wing mirrors are very good. Looking through the wing mirrors also provides an amazing view of the angular air intakes that sit just behind me. as I've mentioned the visibility through the mirrors, I should probably mention the visibility through the windscreen. It's clearly very slanted and a very cute angle. It's still a fairly large piece of glass, so visibility through the front, at least for me, is pretty good. If you're any higher, if you're any taller, I can imagine the visibility would be obstructed quite a lot because there's a sort of bulged out section up here that probably has some electronic circuitry for the lighting and the different things up here. You can't really see traffic lights if you stop kind of close to them. It can be a bit of an issue, so you kind of have to really kind of duck down and look out the side window. As you probably already know, there are 3 driving modes to this car: Strata, Sport and Corsa. I currently have the car in Strata, which is the most easygoing mode. The car is fully automatic, the exhaust valves are closed, the steering is very light, and same as the throttle. What I'm finding though, at least in this mode, this car can be quite jerky because obviously there's 600 horsepower behind me. That's going to translate through the throttle anyway, regardless of whether it's soft or heavy. So it's quite twitchy. That's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just a characteristic I've noticed about the car. The car has a 7-speed gearbox and it shifts pretty much effortlessly in Strata. Of course, you can also change gear with the paddles found here behind the wheel. This one is to change gear up, this one's to change gear down. They have a nice cold feeling. They're very large, so you can sort of locate them very easily, which is something that I absolutely love. So how loud is it in here? Well, I'm not sure if you can kind of get a feeling for the ambient noise through this microphone, but it obviously is quite loud. I mean, I've got a naturally aspirated V10 sitting right behind me. So the interior space, yeah, of course, it's going to be pretty loud. But what about the noise insulation, being insulated from outside? I have to say, it's pretty good. Now, in terms of wind noise, exterior noise, you would think that the wing mirrors, crafted in the manner that they have been, would create some sort of draft sound, but they don't at all. Not that I can hear anyway. And of course, how slanted the windscreen is, it's very aerodynamic. And the air just, it's not like a G-Wagon, for example, where the air is buffeting against something that's sort of perpendicular to it. The air flows straight over the car, so you don't get a huge amount of wind noise either. So what about the steering feel? Steering feel, at least in Strata, is very light, very easy. This is probably an easier car in terms of overall driving than my Porsche Boxster. With that, you've got the clutch, and you obviously have to match the clutch with the throttle, and with this you don't have to do any of that, and it's a very light feel as well. Other than being jerky like I mentioned before, it's a very, very easy drive. Of course, when you put it into Sport and then Corsa, the steering feel, the throttle feel, the gear changes will become harder, they'll become more aggressive. Interior room is pretty good too. The ceiling is of course pretty low. Me sitting up straight, I'm almost touching the ceiling, so anyone over 6 foot I imagine is going to have maybe a bit of trouble in this car. But in terms of the width, it's really, really spacious. I mean, you could fit 2 people in here pretty easily. So the interior of this Huracan has been finished with the ad personams. That's like the bespoke configurable interior options. So they've gone for the red Alcantara on the door armrests. There's Nero Alcantara on the centre of the seats with black leather on the side and red stitching as well. Interior, the colour scheme is kind of reminiscent of the Abarth that I have, obviously scaled up. But for this kind of car, you've got the black, so that's the really stealthy look on the outside, which really suits it. And then coming onto the inside as well, of course it suits it again, but then you've got the red, passionate, intense. It's a great colour combination for a car like this. If we talk about the radio and the infotainment system, I'm actually kind of not that impressed with it, in all honesty. I've heard other reports saying that it hasn't been great, but of course you have to find things out for yourself. And no, it's kind of flat, kind of tinny. I imagine also the engine noise drowns it out a little bit. I mean, it's not terrible, it's not bad, but it's just a little bit kind of, I don't know, there's obviously, there is a bass sound to it, there's a bass note to it, but it's kind of tinny, kind of flat. So it makes sense to me that people I've watched online have upgraded the system. So the car's fitted with a DAB digital radio, so you can select through a massive amount of different radio stations. The signal is actually really clear, so the signal strength is good, even though the sound quality, isn't amazing. So that's a plus at least. You can attach your phone using a Bluetooth connection or an aux connection, so you can play all your music from any like Spotify, iTunes, or just your phone's memory. There's also a full sat-nav system that you can scroll into and scroll out of using the controller in the central column. It's a pretty easy system to use. slightly laggy, I suppose, if you're comparing it to something like Waze or Google Maps on your phone. As I'm in fairly slow-moving traffic on the motorway right now, I thought I would elaborate on a couple more things I'm finding out about this Huracan. So the first is its ability in stop-start kind of traffic. It does decelerate quite quickly just by taking your foot off of the accelerator. You know, not a lot of cars do that. At slower speeds, it's very rapid in this kind of style, which can be a bit unnerving at first, but you know, you do get used to it. And because the left side of your body essentially isn't doing anything, it's not really labour intensive. The car, believe it or not, it does actually have a stop-start button, so you can flick it up, and when the car is stationary, but you know you want to continue driving, the engine will switch off, just like a normal, you know, like in a regular car. I haven't actually used that feature. I can imagine, because the startup is pretty loud, I can imagine that getting annoying after a while. But for fuel economy, I imagine it's a fairly useful feature. The second thing I wanted to talk about was the car's braking ability. Now, it's fitted with carbon ceramic brakes all the way around, and they deliver a braking experience like nothing I've ever experienced before. Yeah, I've driven, you know, an F430 Spider, and I've driven the LC500. They're both powerful cars, not as powerful as this, but you know, the F430 at least is definitely a supercar. The braking power on this car is incredible. You only need to depress the pedal very slightly for the car to start braking quite aggressively. And you can easily stop from quite a speed in a very short distance. You know, you have confidence in the car's driving ability, but it's definitely, because it's so kind of jerky and it really, really grips on, it's definitely something that you have to get used to. I mean, yeah, you could argue that, you know, you have to get used to the brake feel and accelerator feel in any car, but in this especially, because they're just so aggressive. Inevitably, the traffic has pretty much come to a standstill now, and of course, as I say that, we start moving. One thing I've noticed is that even in traffic, this car gets a massive amount of attention. People to the sides, the front. If I look through the rearview mirror, I can see people kind of, you know, stretching their necks to get a better look. People getting multiple looks, so if they park up by the side for whatever reason, you know, they'll keep looking over. There'll be mixed opinions. Some people want to smile and wave, others will kind of look like, you know, what are you doing in this car? I don't know, or sort of looking a disapproving way. But it gets attention from wherever it goes. I guess that makes sense. It has such a dynamic aesthetic, and it's not the kind of thing that you would see every single day. I for certain, but that's because I'm a car fan, I guess, but I for certain would look if I saw a Huracan in traffic. But just because of the look of the thing and the rarity of it, I mean, I haven't seen another Huracan on the road. The thing I did see earlier was actually a Cream Development's like 1200 horsepower GTR, which is pretty crazy. Again, to take the Evhire Lamborghini Huracan back to its home. What are some of the conclusions that I can draw from this experience today? I think my time at the Huracan today cements that cars have dual personalities. It's not necessarily just this Huracan, the LC500 had it as well, to a lesser extent. This has a massively dual personality. So in Strata, yeah, it's loud. Yeah, it's still loud, it's still bumpy. It's still kind of jerky when you first kind of get into it, and of course it's still got carbon ceramic brakes, so the braking is still, you know, very firm, very quick as well. But at the same time, for what you expect it to be, it's an easy driving experience. I mean, you only need a little bit of driving experience, and because it's an auto and because it's four-wheel drive, you know, you don't have to worry about changing gear. You've got plenty of traction. The steering's very light. Overall, it's a very easy driving experience. But then, of course, you put it into sport. The engine gains revs. The throttle becomes harder. The steering becomes harder. The exhaust valves open up. So it becomes a far more aggressive experience. And then in Corsa, you can only shift in manual with the paddles. So once again, that's even more hardcore. So you can do the kind of pootling around town thing. The vehicle lift makes that a lot easier. Although, of course, this is not ideal, but even so, you can do it. You know, you can get over speed bumps, you can maneuver over potholes. but it's a lot more relaxed than you expect, well, at least I expected it to be. Another conclusion is that it's quite frustrating, really, driving this car. Maybe it's just because I've mainly been on the motorway today, but the power you can't use at all. I mean, yeah, you can have little spurts here and there, but you cannot use the power in any way. It's so frustrating because the car's so ready, it's so live, and so you're constantly fighting with yourself. On one hand, yeah, of course, I want to floor it, but on the other hand, you know, I don't want to be getting tickets or getting a fine or getting points on my license, just silly stuff like that. So I suppose it's finding the right place, right time, countryside roads. You could see I managed to sort of use the power a little bit more, but generally speaking, you can't. Fortunately, you can get quite a lot of pops and bangs and different things out of the exhaust at low revs, so that can be quite fun, but other than that, it can be a bit frustrating. Let me give you a bit of background about this car. So I featured Evhire a couple times with their Tesla P100D and the Model S P100D. Those cars are for hire, you can get them, go onto the website, use the link in the bio or the description of this video, and you can hire those cars for self-drive anywhere in the UK. Now it's exactly the same with this. This car has been added to their fleet. So you can go to their website, you know, as long as you're over 30, you know, 29, 30, this car is no different. You can go to their website, check their prices, talk to the owner of the company, and you could be driving this car as well, this exact car. You could be having the thrill of the thumping V10 behind you. All of their details, like I mentioned already, can be found in the description of the video. So please, if you're interested in self-drive hire, it's a special occasion, or you just want to experience it just for a day, just for the experience, head over to them. Really easy guys, and they've got an amazing online system. So you don't need to worry about any paperwork, you don't need to worry about signing any forms, it's all done online. The signing of the forms, the payment, really straightforward, easy process. Other than the indicator stalks, what else is kind of annoying? All of the controls, I don't know if this is configurable, maybe I can find out a bit later, but all of the controls are inverted. So to put the windows down, you have to press up on the bottom. The instrument display, the cluster in front of me is very easy to use, very easy to read. Very big rev counter with the speedo underneath and the gear that you're in, and also the A or M, depending on if you're in auto or manual. That's all very easy to read. It's quite a lot of information in all honesty. Maybe it's just me going from the Boxster into this, because there's only 3 screens in that, and they're just little like basic dials, so there's a huge amount of digital information. And you can change the screens as well: nav, menu, telephone, radio, mobile connectivity. You know, it's a serious amount. Adding a little bit to visibility. So I was just checking my blind spot so I could move into another lane, and I realised this car actually has really good blind spot visibility. And that's facilitated by the tiny little triangular windows that are just back there. Those little cutouts essentially allow you to see so much more than you would normally. So as you can see, I'm back in my Boxster after a day with the Evhire Huracan. It feels kind of nice actually to use my left leg again and to use this actual stalk that stays in its location to indicate where I'm going. Now, also kind of nice not to have to use a lift system and to actually have enough room above my head to sit up straight. So those are the positives to being back in this car, but of course there's a massive array of negatives as well. There's no doubting that Lamborghini has made it an awesome car with the Huracan. Because the car is so low, and because it's kind of wide as well, it feels pretty difficult to park, and maybe even just maneuver to begin with. But with the different aids that you have, you know, it makes it a little bit easier. Because the nose is actually so low down, you can't actually see the end of the nose. Even though it's pretty stubby, it's quite short. Which is reassuring, but at the same time, it's a little bit worrying, but I suppose you would get used to it. So if we can touch on fuel efficiency briefly. Now, I don't have an official figure or anything like that from today. I'm sure we could work it out pretty easy. I did about 100 miles, and I used around about half of a tank of fuel, something like that. Considering I did a lot of motorway miles, so therefore the MPG should be a bit higher, I did hoon it a bit as well. It's in sport, revving, that kind of stuff. It still feels fairly good for what it is. So now I'm back in my Boxster. It's kind of made me realise a fundamental difference between the way this feels and the Lamborghini feels. So with most roads, you have kind of a dip either side of a mount, just through wear on the road of where the cars are driving. This car really rides those, so you can feel not just feedback in the wheel, but the car is actually kind of like moving around on the road, not erratically or uncontrollable, but you can definitely feel there's movement in the car. The Huracan didn't do that at all. It was massively more planted than this. Maybe it's because it has wider wheels, it's four-wheel drive, it's got a wider wheelbase, it's just newer. But it was a lot more stable. I just think that's an interesting comparison. Obviously they're very different cars, but even so. So once again, I just want to say a huge thank you to Evhire, Exotic Vehicle Hire, for letting me have the opportunity to test this car today. Amazing opportunity, and I encourage anyone to go and get one of the Evhire cars for the day or for a week. I want to stress how easy and straightforward their booking process is. Literally, it's all online, no paperwork, payments online. You can browse a massive range of stock. They're growing. They're going to be a really big brand, I feel, because they've got such big plans. So I hope you enjoyed this little insight into what it's like to run a Lamborghini Huracan for a day. Please subscribe for all the latest content, and until next time, thanks for watching.